Chen Qi traveled through the collapse and became the sister of one of Caslana's twin daughters, whom Cecilia had never given birth to before. And then choose to bear the fate of the family and humanity. On this road, what kind of posture will she face everything directly and surpass everything? Collapse even compared to it, who are the enemies? Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 1. Suryl Kaslana. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. In 1998, under the rule of fate, St. Mary's Hospital was established. This is the best hospital in the entire Destiny medical system. In this ward, Cecilia was so excited that she hugged her and gave birth to such adorable two daughters. At that moment, it was an immensely joyful event for this family. But for the male owner of this family, compared to his eldest daughter, Suryl, who had just been named Kiana, this child crowned as the sun goddess had to face the deepest filth from within the two families. Andre, what does father mean? Even among the Knights of Fate, Siegfried can be considered a pretty good column. But only he himself understood what kind of situation he was in. As a rebellious son, a scumbag of a family, he knows very well that the reason why he returned to the family that has already gone downhill is only because Cecilia. In a sense, he knows more than anyone how many tricks are behind his marriage to Cecilia. Interest and desire. Although Cecilia is the current saint of the family. But no matter what, he knew better than anyone that his family had already gone downhill. Andre sighed at this point, who doesn't understand the current state of the family. In a sense, Caslana's decline was not just a high consumption of the homeowner himself. After the reform of auto-apocalypse in the past. In a sense, Caslana had already lost too much capital to support the entire family, and for almost 2,000 years, the invisible suppression of apocalypse was no exception. Of course, although the so-called invisible suppression does not exist, the downtrend of the Caslana clan in essence is already predetermined. Of course, he himself is also aware that he cannot change anything. Such as the current situation of this family. Everyone knows that after the emergence of the first law, the entire Caslana family has realized that with the emergence of the law, the family cannot continue like this. Not to mention anything else, among the bloodline members of the family today, there are only a few who can achieve this step. Just in terms of strength, over 2,000 years and 20 generations of family leaders have already become the top leaders of the entire family. In the realm of Valkyrie, Kalyan can be considered at the top level. In a sense, Siegfried knew that the position of his family's hope for this child was another Kalyan. How could they think that way? Andre spoke of the problem and its severity in this way. Some people in our family have been thinking crazy these years, otherwise. He was so aware of one thing, which was that the existence of Siegfried's cheap sister actually caused a great problem. They are so persistent in that title, so persistent in making their family once again great. On the other hand, is there someone trying everything possible to do it in Shaniat? In almost the entire Shaniat tribe, the existence of Rena has already turned the so-called glory that the entire Shaniat tribe thinks of itself into nothing. And this sad situation has become the reason why the entire contemporary destiny of several major families is so. Even if they agree with the mixed race of the Shaniat and Caslana families, they realize that they cannot continue like this. So, these two children really can't possibly not be needed. Perhaps, after all, what we all know is that our family probably doesn't have any future choices or expectations, right? What are your expectations? From any angle, he knows very well within himself that he cannot change anything. If there is, all that remains is to charge forward and strive for something. He was well aware that two children would inevitably carry those so-called beliefs. And he was well aware that no matter what, both daughters must live up to their own value and status. Otherwise, in the future, at the moment when he and Cecilia will eventually die on the cruel battlefield of fighting against collapse, what value do they have? Apart from their surnames and bloodlines, they also need to live their own value in both families and even the entire destiny. This ridiculous logic, at this moment, Cecilia truly understands what those people in her family are thinking. From any perspective, she is also well aware that these two children will inevitably face doubts and exploitation from their own peers. Two almost perfect law killers, and the most powerful tool for fighting against collapse, two even limitless people in the future. Their value has already reminded this couple at this moment, and the lives of their two daughters are so clear that it is difficult. Very difficult. Ironically, on one hand, they don't want them to face collapse. But in the face of this reality, in such a dark and cruel era itself, what they carry is. They will sooner or later face reality directly. Only when they become the leader of the entire Valkyrie's peers, can they have the possibility to choose their own future. But returning to the question itself, why do the two families insist on placing their future in their two children? When he asked his cousin André, the latter sighed, because no matter what, many people have had doubts about us since then. After all, no matter what the compromise of Luca's ancestors was back then. Compromise. Siegfried's initial rebellious heart towards the family was due to their role in the issue of Kalian's death. At that time, they were aware that many of the practices of the old Vatican were wrong but could not make any decisive corrections or actions. Even in a sense, they tacitly acknowledged the disregard of fate for human life and dignity. Otherwise, why can they? But he knew that there were some things in blood that could not be changed. Even though Teresa is not allowed to participate in any internal affairs of the Caslana family, after all, it was Otto who gave birth to Teresa. And the sensitivity of her bloodline lies in the fact that she and Karen are both members of the extinct Francis family. Nowadays, almost all of the destined Castellana family members, without exception, originated from the Luca family of the past. But under that model, everything that his parents had taught him, at the age of 15, he learned about the negative role of the family in that period of history. Nowadays, he probably doesn't have the same sense of belonging as in his youth. Even in his youth, he believed that the life he pursued would not require any involvement with Caslana. But these two children are different. The son of Caslana and Chaniot is destined to become the beginning of the family's own expectations for the so-called heroic path, glory, future, and expectations. Even in a sense, their value determines. Don't worry, Suryl's value is enough, but have you ever thought that the two of them will not even face the law enforcement in the future, but rather, he knew, and this natural jealousy was like this. Back in the day, a non-Chaniot made the entire Chaniot race a joke. And two children, two enough to turn the contemporary Valkyrie family into a complete joke. At this moment, it makes middle-aged people worry so much. On the other hand, at the age of 15, he realized that the noble and sacred bloodline of Castellana in the eyes of the world has never been sacred. The kind of curse associated with the collapsing beast. He is well aware of the significance of these two children. And they will also discover these sooner or later. So, what will happen to them? I don't know, André said. I know you don't want them to get involved in those whirlpools, but if they want to be able to settle down at the very least, they want to live. Instead of dying. Like Karen, dying for the so-called family interests. That's right, family interests, a ridiculous statement in the contemporary world. At this moment, it deeply reminded them of everything. And in the future, the rise of the Sun-Moon Gemini of the Caslana family. Naturally, it will be the biggest news in the history of the entire Destiny Valkyrie. The so-called Sun and Moon mean that the vast majority of those who rely on their families in the entire Destiny will become jokes. However, the rise of the Sun-Moon Gemini will also have a greater impact on everything. After all, they will become the pinnacle of this era, and even many years from now, Caslana and Chaniot. And many years later, when faced with their respective clones, the older sister among them was very willing to confront herself, and in this regard, her achievements. Just at this moment, there is no limit to the quantity. But on this day the Dragon Slayer only sighed, and their choice was to entrust Suryl's future to the family. Perhaps, in a sense, what she can do is even more astonishing. But when André left, Delisa said, "Siegfried, do you really think of her?" "I don't know, at least," Teresa sighed, "you know very well, your family's secret. The corpses of those who died due to uncontrolled and mutated bloodlines have always been there. What consequences does the collapse of some of the darkest secrets within the family mean from any standpoint? In the history of a family, there are too many things that are not so glorious at all. Therefore, they are facing such a dilemma. This child will face those sooner or later. It's not you, it's us, but at least my surname is Apocalypse," Delisa said at this moment, "and as long as this issue is not resolved, your family will never accept anything. Besides, on this issue, Grandpa and your family also have many people, and they would never want a second saint from Caslana to appear." They talked about that issue after all. Almost the entire Castellana family had already experienced a more rapid decline at that time. And another family, it's not like that. Even the holder of the black abyss and white flowers did not belong to the people of Shaniat for a period of time. It's the world that Sullivan is facing. Chapter 2. Family Expectations. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Just like at this moment, for this girl named the goddess of sunlight. She and her sister are just one object of the dirty and ugly calculations within the two major Valkyrie families of fate. Just like many years later, when Sun and Moon Gemini and Chilan Caslana each talked about everything in their memoirs, they had to not mention that past issue. What should I mention, however? On this day, a series of meanings mean that one of them will become Caslana's future successor or hope. When Siegfried presented the agreement to Cecilia at this moment. "Siegfried, our family also has feelings for me. Interest, desire. 2 children, 2 common heirs of the blood of Caslana and Shaniat in the contemporary era. How could they easily get rid of it? Even if they strive so hard, it is only a brief time before they reach the path of becoming the Valkyrie. But the man knows that Cecilia is different from himself. Leaving his family, he can work part-time and rely on his own struggles to survive. But everything about Cecilia, including her glory in everything, is closely related to the family. And the 2 daughters do not have their own life choices. Just like a shattered existence, in such a reality, the old man named Siegfried Caslana cannot make such a choice. Just as he is very clear and aware of the outcome of that agreement. Before the 2 daughters turn 17, one of their childhood will temporarily stay away from collapse. And he chose Suryl, the child named Dawn. Perhaps they are so clear that they cannot do these things. Some things are built on interests, but they cannot make any changes on this point. So, their choice won't even have any surprises. But on that day when she was finally taken away, this young child, who was given such a name, did not have much attachment. Perhaps it is the meaning of the agreement, or perhaps it is the power she possesses. Or perhaps, the long spear named Godslayer that appeared beside her not long ago. Well, those who are known as God-slaying are said to be able to rival the key of the gods. Everything created by the branches of this imaginary tree is a sharp weapon that this 1-year-old child obtained in her system's simulation space. And on this day, when the child started training, prepare for everything that happens in the future. After all, compared to that silly little sister, she is well aware that she must do everything well in this regard no matter what. The killer spear is the result of a pre-civilization world. 1-year-old on this day, 1-year-old Suryl had already started learning earlier than her other peers who belonged to the same family. Although she is clearer, she knows that there are things she cannot change on her own. In March 1999, when her progress was so rapid. Sigmund, looking at this outstanding granddaughter of his own, compared to being useless, my son, as well as a bunch of guys with different thoughts within the family. Faced with the current decline of the family. On any level, this elderly person is well aware of this. Clearly, the internal reasons for the decline of the family. Whether it's the consumption of the homeowner or the decline of the bloodline. But that has always been a taboo secret in the family. The deepest curse hidden within the entire family bloodline. The so-called curse of Caslana is not just about fate and sacrifice. In a sense, those things within their bloodline. Those, such a shocking part. Although, he knew better than anyone in his heart that it was by no means a blessing or pride. But only at this moment, he looked at the blonde man. "Long time no see, old friend, your highness, why are you here today?" he said. "Two children, your family has two mixed races that perfectly combine Caslana and Shaniat. Moreover, their power is so strong. What do you want? In the future, at least it's her. Of course, the other one will also be more valuable. It's just about fighting against the value of collapse, although Otto's staff thinks that the two children may truly unite the two families. But they looked at her, seeing that she was only 1 year old, and trained with that long gun that emitted such amazing power. Furthermore, children who learn while exercising their combat skills. Of course, in this century, do you want to see the collapse come to an end in the hands of your generation? 23 people at least 2,500 years since the founding of Tianming, the tragic sacrifices of 23 knights and the enormous cost paid by thousands of children of the Caslana family. In the land of Caslana, so many of those people are sleeping. At this moment, Otto's proposal is very simple. Acceptance interest in a sense, compared to Suryl and Kiana Caslana, they have more value and importance. Perhaps it is a possibility that two children are so evenly matched and amazing. They are even enough to make the entire Valkyrie family, big and small, tremble even more. And Sigmund understood what the existence of this child meant. Many people in the entire family will fear them. After all, the strength of the mixed race of Caslana and Shaniat lies here. Although the agreement Siegfried fought for Kiana allowed her to have a relatively good life in a sense before reaching adulthood. But only at this moment, the elder sister who was given the name Sun Goddess understands these things. On the training ground, the radiance of the holy feather was like a strong wind in such a firm and powerful hand. 1 year old, what kind of monster is this? But at this moment, they are bargaining over the fate of the two children. At this moment, she looked at the people on the other side who were extremely excited about Anna Shaniat's birth. "Anna, I won't let you face such a result." She was well aware that everything that happened to Anna must have been related to a certain experiment of fate. But at least here, at this moment, she looked at the white-haired man and the sister beside her. And she looked at the strict schedule she had set for herself not long ago. She didn't have that idle past just as Siegfried watched her exercise so seriously. Just like she gave herself the equipment and courses designed for every age group. He looked at Kiana, so happy, my child, the future is in your hands. In a sense, he knew why she was so strict with this plan and everything. So much so that even Cecilia couldn't accept it. But the question is, what can they do? The jewel of the lawmaker, a condition sufficient to exchange for Kiana's freedom and choice in life. This is the attitude of the Knight family. And the saints also have their own interests and desires in Kiana. After all, will they really accept outsiders as future saints? Or, what does it mean under the two seemingly insignificant words of the Saint of Shaniat and the Saint of the Castellana tribe? And their expectations for their eldest daughter do not necessarily mean a sharp decline in the status of the Holy Maiden family in destiny. At this moment, Siegfried Caslana realized how powerless she was. For someone who has been persistent throughout their life, getting rid of their family. Or, for young people who sacrifice and dedicate themselves to the future and glory of a family, the value of their own life does not need to be equivalent. All of this, at least, is really too cruel for him. But it's different from another fate. At least, he remembers the letter that Suryl gave them saying so. "This is my choice, no matter what, my sister and I have no way to escape these. Moreover, at least the two of us can help each other in the future." That's right, although Siegfried also instructed her to try to gather and establish a certain degree of network. Even in the future, a Valkyrie team of her own will become a necessity. But until this moment, in the heart of Suryl, who had already decided to step far ahead of the ancestors of the Knight family on this road. Everything in the future will change no matter what, through her means and methods. Just like her control over that icy force at this moment. She hid this secret because she knew better that Otto would definitely experiment with the Caslana tribe to control this power, and she was well aware that the other replicates besides Teresa, as well as the subsequent K-plan, were all manifestations of this behavior. Then she looked at the divine killer spear in her hand, a set of Shaniat family's marksmanship so precise. Even the female martial gods at this moment are so shocked. But they didn't know that she also had a bow and arrow, a key from a simulation of a different world god called Day by Day. Every time, she almost accurately planned everything. A child like this who in this world, or even the entire destiny, can become a rival to a child who can make almost all of the Valkyrie family pale. When Delisa saw that figure, she even saw the former figure of her biological mother, Kaslana Kaslana. How powerful can she grow in the future? On this issue, she dare not even think about it in the future. After all, even if it was her own, it was through life and death. At the time of her birth, she was already more astonishing than a considerable portion of her peers in several families when she faced the attack of an entire judgment-level collapse beast. And how strong would Suryl, her eldest niece, be? Chapter 3. What Destiny Expects. You are listening at novelfull.audio. But only on this day did Suryl understand that the future would be even more difficult than the years in her memory. There is probably nothing else behind her, the eldest daughter of Caslana who replaced Kiana. Siegfried. No, after all, from any perspective, he rose to power only because within the Castellana family, there was no one who met the requirements of all parties. From any perspective, when this child has spent the first 3 years of her life, she knew better than anyone in her heart what the other Castellana's eyes looked like. That's jealousy. A person born with the purest blood of Caslana and Shaniat. Moreover, its power can only be compared to that of its second daughter, Kiana Kaslana. Such a child, so much so that almost the vast majority of the knights and saints' families have become a joke. In 1999, when she was only 2 years old, she was more aware of the power she possessed than anyone else. At the age of 2, it has become the future and tomorrow in the eyes of the entire Caslana family. But only she, who will become the holder of the new 7th divine key. At this moment, the intensity of her diligent study and practice in controlling the icy power within her family bloodline is also the same. And it is said that this child can even adapt to the 11th divine key. Although Delisa said she could give it to her eldest niece, but at least it's not the time before all of this. Think about it, 2 children, both at the same time, will be the most dangerous sign for the Caslana tribe to once again become strong. How can it be obtained by the scum of ordinary so-called families? And their growth is not something that families can control. Thinking of all this, Sigmund felt sad for his 2 children at this moment. After all, family, how ridiculous and pitiful. Nowadays, they are just a complete joke. The family motto and the disregard for personal life by fate have become a contradiction. And they, even the surname Caslana, have never been so noble. She is the proof of that side. One is another manifestation of the curse of the family. And Sigmund knew that she would have to face everything sooner or later. The 2 bonds of the gods and the 2 holders mean that everything in the 2 families is closely connected with the sisters. Almost everything revolves around this child who was born with the bloodline of 2 major families, and from any perspective, this child is destined to be dominated by these so-called things. Just like her sister, there is no freedom of her own in a sense. The crowns of Caslana and Shaniat are everything destined for them. In a sense, they are doing their best to utilize these 2 children more than anyone else, taking advantage of the blood, glory, and responsibility carried by Caslana and Shaniat on their shoulders. Even their biological father knows that they have no choice, and even he himself is the same. The family today is already destined. Just like in a sense, the reason why he is still willing to return to the already weakened Kaslana family that has already become so weak in his bloodline after sunset. Perhaps it's because of Shaniat, or maybe it's everything he can't let go of. But the question is whether this child has the right to choose from birth. Absence the twin sons of the knights and saints were born destined to carry the mission of those so-called families. And do they have a choice on this road? Can they possibly live in a world that hasn't collapsed and doesn't need to sacrifice everything to fight against collapse? The answer is no. On this road, he has already witnessed this cruel reality outside. And Suryl, she didn't understand everything that her biological father represented. What they all carry on their shoulders are almost completely opposite things in various meanings. What knights and saints expect is nothing more than warriors and heirs. So, the value of Kiana is closely related to Shaniat. Even in a sense, they have no choice. From their mixed race as a family, they were entrusted with too many expectations and fantasies that should not have been carried on them. They already carry the path that is enough to lead them towards collapse and confusion. The so-called mission that's also the case. Suryl, who carries the name of the sun goddess, understands this truth. When a girl of the same age in the family enjoys love from her parents, at the age of 3, Valkyrie works harder than anyone else in terms of the knowledge she needs to learn. Because she had realized the essence of Kaslana's bloodline earlier, she worked hard to exercise herself in this way. No one knows better than her that in this world, compared to heroes, the sacrifices she had seen were only on those tombstones, with the names of the Valkyrie who fell in the fight against the crumbling road of the Caslana family ranking among them. Their sacrifice has changed too much in a sense. So much so that compared to the pre-civilization era, they at least have the right to feel fortunate for something else. Haha, it's ridiculous, but this child is still continuing to learn and train. She is very clear that facing such a world, she wants to give her sister a relatively good childhood, at least the best outcome. She must do better, even when controlling the power brought to her by the dual bloodline within her body. She, more than anyone else, is eager to pursue the path of becoming a Valkyrie. Is it ridiculous Cecilia doesn't want them to bear the burden, but in this family, even the Shaniat family, their status does not allow them to have a life unrelated to collapse. So, as she trained so hard, she watched her sister and parents frolicking. How much time does she have? She was well aware that there was not much time left until the second collapse. She understood that all she had left on this road was just for this moment, for the glory of Caslana. She understands her own value more than anyone in this family. As if she knew the source of that power, including the fate of this world, and even the entire human race, is inevitably weighing on 2 children. She is well aware that the real world of collapse is definitely not that simple. Tianquan, Siberia. Those shocking deaths left her with no right to choose. Of course, in a sense, she was also more convinced that in this era, the will of the 2 major families behind their parents could not change anything. Even Otto, she knows very well what he really wants. Is it Kalian's resurrection? The answer is simple. That is a Kalian who never died in 1477. To be precise, from the beginning of his actions, he held on to something like this. But the problem is, how can Colin, who bears the name of Caslana, accept and face the reality of fate 500 years ago? When this child only showed Otto the diary, the wisdom of the person named Sun Goddess among the Sun-Moon Gemini of knights and saints was here. Otto, how could you be afraid that a Caslana could see what you really want? Why not, said the 560-year-old man, from any angle, she is very clear. What shaped Colin is represented by the 4 words Caslana, and I have almost completely detached myself from this point of creation for Delisa. So, do you think she will hinder you? Just like Walter in your eyes, she wants to ask me a question. Do you not have any responsibility for the tragedy of Caslana's life? Have you considered her feelings? That's right. Otto has been reflecting for hundreds of years, constantly pondering where he went wrong at that time. Is it because of the collapsing beast or the problem that the child mentioned? He later on, it was no longer Otto from the childhood of Caroline. But, apocalypse. If what would happen if you were not born into two families? The answer is simply written in a more brutal way. As Caslana said, but I will definitely not accept this result. Nonsense. What is the connection between everything in the parallel world and him, that is not his happiness and everything? If he wasn't so fixated on a Caroline who never died in 1477, he could simply accept these. Even in a sense, with Otto's talent, we can simply replicate a Caslana with that memory, without the sadness of their past. But the question is that still him? What kind of person is Karen, who did not die in 1477? That diary, Suryl asked Otto such a pure question. The essence of that question ultimately inevitably questions the core of Otto Apocaris's actions that have been evaded for 500 years. Have you really not considered accepting reality? You don't know, the void of 10,000 Song Dao, I really don't know, but the premise of all of this is that I am still the same Otto as before. And the fact is, I have already changed. He recounted a fact that seemed unrelated to the current Otto apocalypse. He has already undergone the most thorough and deeply rooted changes. What kind of way would Otto face the past? Or, how would he face the question asked by Caslana's younger generation? If you go back to the past, how can you change the fate and personality of Kaslana? Even changing her death? A question. Chapter 4. What Parents Expect. You are listening at novelfull.audio. But the problem is, will Siegfried and Cecilia really accept that this child carries those so-called missions? They hope that both daughters can live better. But the question is, what is good? This is such a question. A person without true life experience and experience, without what makes them what they are. In a sense, even Siegfried himself admitted one thing in the future. He never thought of being a Caslana from beginning to end. Perhaps no one in this weakened family can resist this surname like Siegfried has always been. He has always hoped that his life should belong to him. However, the emergence of Cecilia has made some changes in a sense. But two children who have been entrusted with too much unrealistic hope by their respective families, carrying things that do not belong to them, missions and responsibilities that do not belong to them, are more aware than ever that some things are definitely not as they think. When Suryl was alone, she could not only absorb the power of the lawyer within her body, but also transform it into her own use. It is enough to make her have an absolute resistance to the power of the laws of law. What Siegfried saw was not as happy as what Cecilia saw. But rather, a complete misfortune. What should we do? The husband was so clear that the family behind them, even fate, would not change their self-righteous ambition towards this child. Moreover, they all know how those who harbor malice towards this child and everything behind their own family will view it. Think about it. Whenever they realized that she might become the subject of the experiment, they remembered the holy blood experiment they had received before. No one can be more worried about their children than Cecilia, but no matter how much they worry. She is well aware that she and her husband are different. He can leave, but what about her? Would she really be willing to take her two children and accept the ups and downs of leaving the family? But no matter what, she can only do her best to think for the future of her two children. Valkyrie, this is probably the best path for them, and only in this way can they establish themselves within the family. Ironically, they can only rely on the bishop, not their own kin. No one is clearer than Cecilia about the current situation of this family, known as the Virgin, with decline and fragmentation, which is a vivid portrayal of today. And they, even many things she did herself, couldn't change this. Just like, today's Shaniat has already become more distorted. The glory of the past and the decline of the present. And two children, two sons with two major family lineages. Cecilia is not sure how many people within her family are willing to accept all of this. In the past, Rina Briganti made those who used to honor the Virgin family and take pride in the holy lily emblem of this family crazy, and even the common close relatives within the family hope to continue the family's former glory through pure-blood Shaniat. But she is the exception. The couple didn't know how Bianca would repeat the same process in the future and fiercely beat and flattened almost the top Valkyrie among the entire Chaniath. Furthermore, everything was successfully achieved. I don't even know if there are some extremist elements within the Shaniat family who want to restore the family's glory behind Anna Shaniat's experience and that experiment. Today when Suryl was studying alone at this moment, she was more aware than anyone of the jealousy of many people around her and even those she knew. Many children from the Shaniat and Caslana families harbor deep jealousy towards everything she has shown. No one can understand that a person is born to stand at the highest point of two families. A person who possesses such a powerful talent. Within the two major families, there are probably no so-called friends. After all, two people. Two, he will become the leader of the entire destiny, like them, known as the people of Valkyrie. The rise of the Sun-Moon Gemini has been predetermined since today. Just like on this day, she was seen by others practicing diligently with a wooden sword model of the heavenly fire holy saber destruction mode on her back. Perhaps because of this child's contemplation of this issue, no one can be intimidated by the fact that they have been on the path to becoming Valkyrie since they were a few years old. Just some people around her watched her figure, these people, who were born as part of the Shaniat family and married to outsiders. Compared to those with deformities or other pure blood caused by incestuous marriages among close relatives of the Shaniat family, their status is not very high. Of course, in a sense, the harsh environment within the Shaniat family. Also, at this moment, Suryl's letter to her parents should not let Kiana get involved with those people. No one can understand why she has no interest in the unbearable affairs of the Valkyrie family. Perhaps her father has always been aware of the fact that those families have long declined, to the point where they can almost only rely on this superficial strength to maintain it. Especially in this era, there is still Chiana, who is loved by her parents. What she never knows is that she, her sister, and even her younger sister will bear such deep jealousy from the two families of Caslana and Shaniat. Sometimes, she can't understand to a large extent why that surname is so persistent, and even some people in novels who mainly focus on Chen Qi don't understand that that surname is not good. As if what K423 took away, but at this moment, it was clear to her that the crown of the surname Caslana meant such profound pressure. When she chose to shoulder the knight, Siegfried also made a decision at this moment. If her eldest daughter really wanted to be determined to embark on a path beyond her family's ancestors, why not leave the heavenly fire divine cutting to her? Given this, he was just calmly preparing. But at that moment, after seeing the sweat of that figure and giving it away, he knows very well she wants her younger sister to have at least a relatively better childhood. But the question is it possible? As long as it collapses and ravages the world, they cannot have such a childhood or even a better future. On this road, she is even more outstanding and outstanding. Alternatively, in the years to come, their respective beliefs and paths will also be the same. They need to move forward, need a more grand, long-term path that is enough to achieve their vision of the future. On this road, they don't have much to do. Isn't it this day for this child who is making every effort to embark on the path towards Valkyrie in the future, even carrying the crowns, honors, and glories that do not belong to this child? She, the person named the Sun Goddess. Looking at those children of the same age as them, those who will become Valkyrie as an honor. How much of Valkyrie's life does fate require? She is very clear. Whether it's knights or saints, the Valkyrie family, big or small, is just the price of a war that lasted for nearly 500 or even 50,000 years. And this price includes the group of people who died on the tombstones she mourned a few days ago. The things they were born to carry, giving them all their life value and meaning, are all for such a mission. How many times have she seen major collapses, and how many times have she seen the casualties of those collapses? Suryl, you don't need to think that way. After all, our battle wasn't just about it, said an elderly Valkyrie at the time. But I'm well aware that I have no choice at all. Our family, our mission, and even the meaning represented by the curse of Kaslana make me flawless in choosing something. On the path I am going to take, even myself may become a, but have you ever thought that your mother really hopes? But since I was born into this family, I have realized that I must carry it. I just don't want my sister to face everything that could tear her apart. I understand some things, no one wants them. But when I feel this power, when I, along with my own loved ones, carry those so-called curses of Kaslana, I realized that I had no right to choose. This road, the blood and sacrifice of our ancestors, and even the 23 heads of the entire Caslana family, have determined that I must follow their path. I want our children, like me, to no longer need to embark on such a path full of blood and sacrifice. I don't want the children of Shaniat to lose their freedom and hope in life for their so-called mission and everything. A sentence tell the determination of this young child, who is only a few years old, and she continues to work hard on this path on this day. To live is like this. Even she was well aware of the problems she faced in this era. Her power, including even the power of the lawyer. And she, what I want to become is this kind of existence. Chapter 5. The Beginning of Fate, 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. But neither her parents nor anyone else could understand what Suryl saw and what she was worried about. She knows very well that she can't rely on anything. Even she had almost no other choice but this path. She was powerless in the face of a second collapse. But when this 3-year-old child calmly made a very simple request. To go to the Red Alliance branch as the Valkyrie. A few-year-old child, however, has put forward these things in this way. Perhaps it was all because of her premonition, or perhaps this kind of kindness. She calmly proceeded with all the preparations. Intervene in everything near the Tower of Babel laboratory. And she is well aware of her own value. It is also clear that unless Kiana herself can make herself and her name live on a day that is worthy of recognition and comparable to the meaning of Kali and Kaslana. In the post-apocalyptic era of later generations, it was not like this during the St. Kiana festival. At some point, she felt it was ridiculous, so ridiculous that it made her feel sad for herself and her sister. In any sense, those crowns are right here. She is well aware that she has no choice. I only had to take those things, just like everything Siegfried told her, when heading to the Red Alliance branch. Suryl looked at the friends she had made around her, and she knew very well that no matter what her surname was, she had to prove her worth. And when her father learned about the decision she made, he immediately contacted some people to take care of her as much as possible. But can this really be that simple? Cannot. She was well aware of this, so she was no different from the others. After arriving, many female martial gods in the Tianming Red Alliance branch kept thinking about whether the headquarters was sick as they looked at this young child. But they realized that it must be the child of a failed internal struggle within a large family. This also gives them an illusion. However, on this day, when she was so strict in planning her life, among them, only about how to adapt to the weather within the territory of Czech Lap, and all preparations for the future have begun. This day when she began to rise as the youngest but so outstanding intern of her time. She is so young. In this way, it began to rise before the outbreak of the second collapse. Until she obtained the qualification to patrol the Tower of Babel as a trainee Valkyrie. Of course, all her plans are just for the ultimate pursuit of a means to change her destiny. At the Tower of Babel that she is currently responsible for patrolling, those experiments are still ongoing. In such a way. However, she knew in her heart that this was not just a year-long period of time. For so many years, the entire destiny has been operating and accumulating in the local area for too long. So much so that she needs to achieve many things in order to seek her rightful position and benefits within the entire branch. And her talent lies in the connections and identities she has had during this short period of time. Let all of this be fine. She didn't allow all of this to become a problem, so on that day, she continued to study like this while continuing her work as an intern Valkyrie in one of the guardians of the Tower of Babel. Occasionally, she also meets some experimental subjects. As a knight, until she gradually showcased her talents and abilities. No one can feel the more powerful power demonstrated by this young child on the first day she was sent here, like Shilin at this moment. Even when she directly revealed her identity to the management of the Tower of Babel. She is also here at this moment. But what she is studying is a tube of blood that she draws out from her own body, emitting an extremely cold aura. The so-called power of Caslana is so amazing. So much so that, at this moment, they were shocked to see this 4-year-old child, a monster who had already surpassed most of them academically in his first month walking towards the Soviet Union branch. Is this Caslana? Is this the highest level pervert in that family? So much so that, for many years in later generations, this uncrowned emperor of the Su League branch was more aware of what he had to do than anything else. In that case, she needs to use that force to achieve some objective goals. For example, the law of death. This is what she wants to get. To a large extent, she also needs to change something in this era. Such as her plan will inevitably pursue something else. Such as constraints, the core of which is the redemption jewel. Think about it, that's all she did at this moment. Constraints are a clear and direct force. At this moment, she is preparing for the future. No one can understand what she needs to do at this moment. I am well aware that my father, who never knew what he should or should have been. And over the years, my use of my personality and psychology will keep me invincible in the face of all that. I know that in all the plans that come, I can only ignore this. At least, what I need is to make that power a clear identity, of course perhaps using my own mixed bloodline awakening to transform the power of the lawmaker into something for personal use. But to avoid some things, everything I do is the same. And my experience, everything that happened to me, will be the beginning. Think about all the things I need to face and consider next. Even including what I, as the ruler of this era, can do. One person will be enough to make some things fit within the distance I control. And, for the plan that I will implement next, the established plan remains the same. I am very clear that he will definitely go and read my letter, and I also know how I can see through his heart over the years. For this reason, my value is crucial, and my heart must be prepared for everything in the future. I will not stop the birth of K423, and a third sister is enough to be a testament to my second sister and a witness to her growth. I will be clear about controlling something on the other side of the distant and dark reality. And, you know, to deal with 2 lawyers, including myself and Celine. And my father, who is bound to unleash this potential, has enough of a disintegrating fission bomb that engulfs me for everyone to see. I am very clear about what this means, how old as a child, but at this moment, what a cruel foundation has been laid for everything in the future. One, able to see through everything about the auto-apocalypse he knows very well. The person who has pursued a profound understanding of him from beginning to end is like this in nature. Therefore, no one knows what she will do in this plan. Such as she was well prepared and simulated a personality that hates humans, and then prepared to use it. Even the newly formed legal consciousness has been transformed into one of her own personalities by her inner self. One of the future Sun-Moon Gemini has already laid the foundation for his rise at this moment. In the future, during the second collapse, her performance and abilities changed everything. Just like, she changed the fate of many people who should have died tragically. The only cost. Chapter 6. The Beginning of Fate, 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. However, such a plan is no exception, and she knows better than anyone what the cost is. Just like the letter she wrote to Kiana, it was also a condition. To obtain unshakable glory for herself as a Valkyrie. That's right, you can add as many crowns to your head as you want, no matter what, at least you must create the value of your own name in life. This is what my sister told her sister, and during this period, the existence of Suryl, the goddess of sunlight, changed many experimental subjects. For her, as a child of several years old, she would have simply won too many benefits for herself. The existence of the law of discipline in this era, one of the two major killers of the law of destiny, and one of the future sun and moon Gemini of the Kaslana family. All the glory and laurels in a sense will also be added to her in this second collapse. Why? Because of the value of the name. Because at this moment, Kiana looked at her sister's letter and said, "I will lose me." She kept thinking, of course, this few-year-old child has realized more than ever what will happen next. An intern who has achieved unprecedented status in a branch of a large country. An intern who had almost met many people, and she gradually began to change things. But another issue is that the timing is not yet right. Or rather, she knows better than ever what she will face next. In the following years, no one paid more attention to this white-haired child and the white-haired Valkyrie than those experimental subjects. A young lady from the Knight family, one of the future heirs of the Knight family, is more concerned. Moreover, during this period, she has basically made all the female martial gods in the Su League branch extremely close to her. So much so that she has the first foundation for what she wants to do and what she wants to do. A whole branch will be around her. But she didn't have much confidence in it. What will happen next, she said to one of her own personalities. Sure enough, she said in front of her, dressed in the same clothes as Kevin and holding the form of the heavenly fire holy saber, "What you're confused about is what you can do. You want to save your loved ones, your family. You want to save these children, even Celine. But you know very well that your presence will be a big trouble. Isn't it? In a sense, I am the future you are pursuing." A person named Kaslana, one of Suryl's personalities, said so. The strongest member of the future Knight family, said, "That's right, but you also need to understand that my own choice is the right one. You don't have a salvation story at this moment, just like what you want to carry in your heart is not just your own sister. On one hand, you want to change Celine's fate, and on the other hand, you can't change the birth of K423. You know what Otto wants. You also know that at least everything can be changed. But you are more aware of your own innate strength, allowing you to enjoy everything of childhood flawlessly. You know the confusion in Siegfried Kaslana's heart from beginning to end, and you even see. Moms, I know Cecilia's choice, she is destined to carry this path and step by step on to death, she said. This is the inevitable choice of the Chaniot family, and she will never go. No wonder you think Cecilia has the same meaning to her aunt as Kallian does to Otto, said Salvation, as someone in her personality who identifies with and pursues the part of Castellana's family teachings. In a sense, she represents a certain state of her future in this way. On the other hand, he has always been thinking about what he needs to do, what kind of path he needs to take. For example, responsibility, for example, the so-called mission of Caslana. Those things are the reasons that shape them. She is well aware that she has already begun to make significant changes. Including all of this, including fate itself. And the so-called fate is like this. Will Otto accept the mixed race of two Caslana and Chaniot families and bring them together as a whole? No one, more than Cecilia a year ago, realized that if Kiana really had the heart to take over, there would be many people in her family who were extremely dissatisfied with this. Moreover, she asked herself in her heart that her status was only that of a saint of Chaniot, rather than a true saint of the entire destiny. I am not the kind of person who can command the entire destiny of Valkyrie. But the problem is that her daughter already has such ambition to stand at the highest point of the entire destiny of the world. Such it's the beginning of the plan, but at this moment, they are very clear about what to do next, what to plan, and what to achieve is not just that one thing. There are also those that are enough to put them under even greater pressure and face more existence that can put them in greater danger and difficulties. Even the upcoming second collapse is a part of it. However, no one looked at the child named Celine more than Suryl at the moment. And her concern for Shiline's pain is so genuine. Truly enough, she knew she was just continuing her old job. The work of studying one's own bloodline. Is this the truth that will lead our father into such a great confusion about himself in the future? If the fact that there is the gene of the collapsing beast in the blood of Kaslana were revealed, then what would our family become? Even if Otto doesn't use our family for experiments, what do we think we are proud of and swear to hold on to? She just watched the blood sample quietly, and at that moment, she continued her initial work on Kaslana's blood in this exclusive laboratory. She is well aware that the uniqueness in her generation is not just about the absorption, transformation, and self-evolution of legal power. If I could crack it myself, and even know, think about it, will your achievements bring benefits to you and your sister? Her other personality warned, you know very well that you are not only facing collapse, but also the eyes of those families from within the destiny are always there. Remember, you said that you and your sisters are not just you. You have almost nothing behind you, even your mother. Yes, you will save Cecilia. But you know better than anyone, for women and children, you hope that she no longer needs to bear the burden of collapse. You and your sister will bear the same painful awareness. That's right, so, you will suffocate your own childhood with your own hands. Kiana will do the same. I will save my mother, I will change everything. The future third sister. She said, even more so, she is a reward that I will give to Shaniat. Qilin Shaniat, it must be generous enough. But the problem lies here, which means what kind of darkness she will break and how to make this darkness better. And no one knows, Delisa will face the dilemma that her great niece will face. Oh, what a crazy gamble, what a real and ridiculous mockery of the so-called fate. Only at that moment did she understand how many people would still be on this road. And knowing everything from her niece's diary and Otto's true attitude towards herself, all she can do is to change everything to the greatest extent possible. She knows the situation in Siberia and the Soviet Union branch. If that incident is exposed, the Sioux League branch will no longer maintain a false pretense towards the Tianming headquarters. And she understands the next thing more than ever. A scene it will cause fatal damage to the entire destiny and pose a crisis of collapse. Soon, it will ring throughout Siberia. No one can compare to Delisa, who saw the book analyzing the destruction of the old Vatican caused by the failure of the Holy War launched by fate against China. Anyway, she realized what kind of difficulties her grandfather, Otto Apocaris, would face. What kind of difficulties will the overall destiny face? Anyway, my eldest niece said everything. Once the entire destiny cannot withstand it, and the domination and control of the branches of Eurasian countries by the destiny that have been shaken since the Thanksgiving incident will inevitably collapse in an instant. But the question is, what will happen next? What kind of crisis is enough to shake the entire destiny? Everything that happened to her eldest niece made her so unable to think anymore. Even though a large-scale population evacuation is underway throughout Siberia. Anyway, she knew very well what kind of turbulence would occur within her entire destiny if her niece had an accident. And once the incident with the Tower of Babel is exposed, how will the power of the entire destiny in various countries be viewed? What kind of crisis will erupt within the entire destiny? She understands how would her grandfather take any action in such a collapse to make the situation less ugly, sad, and ridiculous towards fate. This is what she needs to do next at this moment. But on the other side, just as she quickly carried out everything within a few days, utilizing her identity and value with added effort. Even a branch of a great country will receive more and more because of it. Including status, interests, and a high degree of autonomy within the mandate of heaven. That's why Suryl is so unhesitatingly using these things, the terrifying consequences that inevitably arise from using them. Such as the Tower of Babel Laboratory is a place where the branches and branches of destiny in various countries around the world will be vigilant against the supreme power of the entire destiny. Chapter 7. You are listening at novelfull.audio. And this has just begun. Not only did Teresa not expect her to risk herself. The decline of Caslana is very simple. 500 years ago, warriors and knights were specialties of the family. So, Mongfu and those who seek pleasure are portraits of a considerable portion of the younger generation of knights. And Siegfried is just one exception. However, at least there is hope for some things. But the question is his problem really just that? Of course, at the Tower of Babel, Suryl's thoughts and explorations during this period were focused on. She was more aware of all that than ever before. Realizing that everything cannot be completely changed by oneself. Even if it simply changes Cecilia's death. From beginning to end, she knew better than anyone that Siegfried's age at the time was simply unable to bear that weight. In his heart, he never considered returning to his family from beginning to end. Returning to this family, which he believed had already decayed over time. When Suryl realized the problem and before interning at the Su Meng branch, she said, "If one day my mother sacrifices herself on the battlefield against the collapse, what would you do to me and my sister?" Confused at this moment, Siegfried is plunged into a huge confusion. For him, what he doesn't know is his own value, the conflict between persistence, beliefs, and family. The decay of fate witnessed in childhood was reminded by the moral standards of the higher-ups, and even the ancestors participated in the judgment of Kalian in the face of the cowardice of the Apocalypse family. Caslana is no longer as glorious as his childhood parents taught him in his heart. Or, he knows more than anyone what he fears. If the entire family itself does not have such nobility at all. If they were to flow blood like those shattered beasts. So, what are they? The doubts in his heart have always reminded him. What the eldest daughter said is so true. But he was also more concerned about Suryl's safety. A second collapse was imminent, but he didn't know that she was also doing her best to change something. For example, some things. Or perhaps, some so-called destinies. She is very clear about all of this, clear about those so-called destinies. Then, no one understood why she cared so much about Celine, about someone who was destined to become a sacrifice for the great vision of fate. Of course the word sacrifice is probably a manifestation of the hypocrisy of destiny itself. Why don't you sacrifice yourself when others sacrifice? Why don't you, Otto, experiment with yourself? Almost all of that is the case, you can use others. So, why can't you treat yourself equally? The same thing, that's it. In a sense, this is why Otto only deserves the most thorough disdain for Suryl Caslana's moral values. Therefore, in the face of Caroline, Suryl asked Otto in her diary. What you want is that Caroline never died in 1477, right? That's right. In a sense, Otto looked at those words. She saw it so clearly that she asked a question, in your opinion, why is Kalian Kalian? Why has Kalian become Kalian? Why is it that become anyway? He understands these. Uncle Francis's teachings, as well as the family's teachings. And, the biggest key. The former Otto Apocalypse himself couldn't help but understand why, including Fuhua, Francis, Shakespeare, and even Naoto. It is precisely these, combined with all that she will not become a toy of power. As long as the childhood oath. Let's save the world together and stick to it, tragedy cannot be changed. When she was 3 years old, the diary raised a question like this, and Otto Apocalypse felt sad for Siegfried's child who had seen through his entire life. On the other hand, Delisa also received the diary. That book allowed her to see the true root of all the tragedies in the life of Caroline Caslana. Use oneself as a shield to protect the people. But a child is practicing these things. She asked, Auntie, you're essentially a knight. Knight. She had always been well aware of her initial disgust towards Otto. It was in his eyes that all she saw, thought was still just Kalian Caslana from 500 years ago. But not her. She is only a granddaughter, but her hair color and pupils mean that this contradiction is even more unavoidable. From any angle, her niece pointed out another contradiction in her existence. Otto, what you want is to become his former self. Suryl, who is in the Babel laboratory of the Soviet Union branch, is more aware of her situation. She doesn't know what she should be, what she should persist in and believe in. But no matter what, she didn't know what her persistence meant. She is a knight, but so is the half of her blood that comes from the virgin. The inheritance of Kaslana and Shaniat will also be the same in the future. In a sense, she doesn't know what her appearance will change. Or, it's not just the cocoon of the end. Not only those plans that she has imagined countless times. If her goal is to become the constraining ruler of this era, what kind of pseudo-god will Otto become in the future? Her own sister's talent means she will be the future descendant of the Shaniat tribe. But will this really happen? Will the various forces of fate hope that the surname Kaslana will replace the authority of Apocalypse in the past? At this moment, Suryl inside the Tower of Babel was thinking so. She is so worried. But she saw a person saying, "Sister, it seems that you are concerned about Yolandale." She realized, she saw some possibility. That's right, you're really right. We're not just ourselves, what's behind us? That's right. As this child becomes the actual controller of the Su Meng branch, she is well aware of the situation they will face throughout the future. Once a North American branch, now the future twin of a family will be the ruler of power and the true future master of destiny. The future Castellana twins are the masters of power in the two major families. In a sense, if we include the current Knights of Destiny, Teresa and Siegfried, as well as what Suryl intends, Chilan, the future Saint of Destiny. Think about how someone surnamed Caslana will become the ultimate controller of destiny, a new era that even Francis cannot compare to, a new era. That glorious era is now unfolding here. At that moment, who can win? And she was immediately thinking about everything. What does her sister need to become? How to make the value of one's name unshakable and irreplaceable. The hope of the family, the needs of the world, and the things they each bear, to fight against the mission of collapse. They are also destined to bear everything. In a sense, in her opinion, Kiana Kaslana must be equated with the meaning of the land people in the world of Valkyrie by Shirakawa. Otherwise, in a sense, Kiana has nothing. Just like no one understands why no one can care about her existence. But at this moment, she was also like this. No one knows what will happen in the future, nor does anyone know what she was prepared for at that time. After all, no matter what, the value of some things is also the same. For many years at that time, what the world saw was the great achievement of the Sun and Moon Gemini. Only in such moments can the world see such an astonishing and proud power. However, at this moment in the Tower of Babel, her work is still continuing, evacuating and integrating, turning the entire branch into her own control, and so on. The benefits, as well as all plans, are perfectly reflected here at this moment. That is the true power. Even at this moment, a child who is a few years old is manipulating these things, and it is not her complete understanding of some things in this aspect. A branch, held in her hand. This is a necessary thing. She is very clear about what she is worried about. For example, in the future, hence plans and strategies are determined at this moment. Chapter 8. Tianquan, 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. However, she is not without hidden worries when she asked her sister, if you want to become a Valkyrie like your mother, you have to endure a lot of pain, get hurt and die. You even have to undergo the same holy blood experiment as your mother, would you? Do you know how to do it? A question that was enough to shake Kiana's unrealistic passion for becoming a Valkyrie in her eyes at the time. At that moment, the growth of the person corresponding to the moonlight among the sisters in the future will be the same for many years. After all, no one can imagine such a possibility. A person, a teenager, carrying a series of things that do not belong to her. Becoming a Valkyrie means that your life, everything, family, and loved ones must give way to their mission. Just as they carry the blood of two families flowing through their bodies. That's right, it's just a family in a sense, she is well aware of this. Two families, two fates are like this. In a sense, she already knew her own fate. And, replace it with anything that could make them mentally collapse. In a sense, she can even be said to not care about the fate and future of the family itself. In a sense, the Caslana family has long declined, and Shaniat is no exception. The proud inheritance tool was not mastered by the Shaniat people for a period of time. Even those who are not Shaniat are stronger in utilizing the black abyss and white flowers than those who are Shaniat. The sage family just a corpse from the past, they are not worth any attention. Isn't it? Everything from the past is so ridiculous and unbearable. From any perspective, the era in which they grew up is not the century in which Siegfried grew up. As they were born at the turn of the century, they will inevitably face that problem. That's where the Valkyrie family will go. She is well aware of the essence of every Valkyrie family. Sometimes Suryl Kaslana, who is in the Tower of Babel, always asks herself. Is the meaning of Caslana just a sacrifice? No, one of her personalities said, you will never accept this logic. But that's where its value lies. As far as I know, most of the possibilities of Kiana Kaslana don't have the so-called burdens that consciousness carries. It's also clearer that they don't have any so-called choices on this path. Because that's too luxurious and too luxury, cold-hearted, the other person said, do you really agree? You are so clear in your heart that the path you are going to take may be wrong in the eyes of some people. But on the other hand, you are very clear in your heart that you have no right to choose. Whether it is for Caslana or as Shaniat, you will not have it yourself. Inquire to oneself, Suryl, ask the second personality, in your opinion, the meaning of Caslana and Shaniat is to sacrifice themselves. No, but the problem is, what you have to bear is not just those things. Also, what you have to carry is not just those things. You are not just yourself, behind you, around you, your sister. Even everything about the two families in the future is right in front of you. And what you have to face is not only collapse. People's hearts, and the things you fear. It's here, like the Tower of Babel, as if everything you remember is the same. And everything that happened to Qilin in the future was the same. Would you believe that your sister would not hesitate to say the so-called necessary sacrifice? Would you believe that she would criticize Cecilia's death so harshly? Another fate, another segment of such a dark and tragic fate, in that moment, was also the same. And she also needs to acquire the power of the laws of this era in her own way at this moment. In any case, what she needs to do is not only to surpass her ancestors, but also to go further. But for many years to come, this path will still continue, still following the direction they planned, thought about, and prepared for in the past era. They are all clear that this path must be persevered to the end, and no retreat or compromise is allowed. What if it's death ahead? They are all different to varying degrees. In her personality, almost everything she pursues is an entity. Caslana, the foundation of protection. And Shaniat is his emotional attachment to his mother. Almost all the reasons why she is her in any sense are inevitably equivalent to those things. In a sense, she is not just her, everything from the two major families has transformed into a tangible heavenly flame divine cutting in her inner world at this moment. The same goes for everything about the so-called Castellana. On the other side the shining black abyss and white flowers are like this. The symbol of Caslana and Shaniat, symbolizing the embodiment of power as a carrier. In a sense, she was so clear about what that meant. She knew she couldn't bear two things. Therefore, she chose knights. I have chosen to continue moving forward as a knight. But at that moment, she was so clear about what she needed next. Only in the eyes of others this day can she be so abnormal and dangerous in many ways. She has a clear and profound understanding of this. Constraint means that she can have the strongest guarantee in the face of the threat from the vast majority of lawbreakers and destructive beasts in this era, except for the end. Of course, she was also very clear about another matter in her heart. My younger sister realized her identity and what she needed to become even earlier in those years. She is not only the daughter of Cecilia and Siegfried, but also the blood of Kaslana and Shaniat, which means what she needs is to become the one expected of both families, the one truly worthy of it. That, Kiana Kaslana. But the problem is, they are facing two families, facing the future, facing those possibilities, those true fates. Those things that she cannot escape or deny. And as a sister, she is also not. For many years to come in everything that followed, there were too many things in their respective growth and life that did not belong to that era, and the rise of the sun and moon Gemini was no exception. In a sense, it was the afterglow of that family in that era. Also, the last and most brilliant portrayal of that period of time. No one can see Suryl's actions after the second collapse. No one will see it. It is precisely her overly precise calculations of certain things that have led to the beginning of those things and those means. Therefore all her considerations for the future inevitably turn to another issue. For example, in the future. In the coming years, the calculation of certain things will not change due to certain forces and people. In their plans and visions. The development and extension of certain things. The future of destiny is likely to inevitably gradually disappear. The power of its existence, everything within it, determines that it can never last long. The reliance on which it once oppressed the world ultimately inevitably faded away after a series of contradictions and problems. But how it will disappear is a question. In any case, the era when fate oppressed the world has long passed, and it must also pass. However, this second collapse, caused by her third sister in the future, will be the beginning of Otto's failure, just like Nicholas's Eastern expedition. Although the result of the failure was only fate, she did not even believe that Teresa should be responsible for it. The kind of system established 500 years ago, between the three major families and other aristocrats and other organizations merged by fate. Even how many reforms Otto has made cannot change its core. How strong was the Caslana family in the past? In theory, it is the direct commander of the entire destined military force. Among the three families, although Apocalypse also has warriors. But they are not absolute masters either. 500 years ago, Caslana was not just a small team in that Valkyrie, but a true legion. In the era of the Valkyrie Legion with a basic force of 1,000 people, what kind of power was that? During that period of time, fate was able to seize the opportunity and rise with such power. In the past, Kalian's position as the most powerful Valkyrie since Tianming founded her sect is evident. And back then, they didn't give up on their experiment with the law of erosion. But the failure of that Eastern expedition did not mean that the entire continent saw that fate could only be so. In front of one person, all the power of the entire destiny. The harsh reality of being vulnerable to one person, including holy war knights and Valkyrie. Faced with such opponents, several of them dare to admit their incompetence. One person, the elites of the three major families and the entire military force of Tianming were knocked to the ground with each move and punch. Especially for Karen herself, even the 11th key cannot change her failure. This is the origin of the decline of knights in that era. In the future, Kalian's death will only be the last spark planted for the entire old destiny itself. From any angle, Siegfried, who had seen that period of history, could never have done a series of things in this regard for the entire destiny. Including feeling disgusted with what knights do. After all, no one can understand how ridiculous everything was back then. So much so that the power foundation of the entire destiny became so fragile. Chapter 9. Tianquan, 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. However, this is not just that simple. After all, before she can unleash the divine grace barrier that can drive 1,000,000 megawatts of collapse in the future. Distance, she chopped out 1,000,000 heavenly flames to unsheath. There will be a longer period of time. What is the concept that a 1,000,000 megawatt collapse can drive? Same in terms of power, Suryl is very clear about what she is thinking and facing more things. Moreover, compared to future destiny. Compared to what defined them in the past, they are very clear on this issue that some things and some costs are unavoidable. And how many people need to pay this price? The answer is self-evident. Therefore, everything they have done during this period is just the beginning. Even at this moment, she felt more and more calmly the misfortune of Shilin and her companions. What has she changed? Has fate never done this before? Wendy's misfortune is just an exception. In the past, Otto was like this for human life. Back then, he was so good at finding shortcuts. And in the years that followed, all of this was just the beginning. A true beginning. However, in the coming moments, perhaps due to some kind of prediction of these things, some people will be sent out of here, and larger-scale population evacuations are also taking place. The future Lord of Knights and leader of Caslana spoke so. Tell everything, tell those things. But no matter what, who would believe that a few-year-old child is so controlling something during this internship? The difficulty is also extremely difficult. Of course, to some extent, he is not like that. However, the final apocalypse looked at those reports. The so-called internship is indeed how she gradually gained the power of the entire destiny branch of a great country as a child of a few years old. Bishop, should we, Amber said, don't worry, compared to what knights disdain to do. She understands. Besides, she controls the branch of that country, which means our destiny has been calming down since the Thanksgiving incident. That's right, that's why certain things are never easily changed. Not just the family, not just the world. Perhaps, in a sense, her future thinking on this may be more comprehensive and profound. But this has just begun at this moment. The true beginning, the last of two, perhaps three, individuals. At least the purest and closest in the paternal lineage by blood. And the existence of two of the most outstanding law enforcement assassins and nemesis. Two, regarded as the last expected children of the family in the world, Caslana and Shaniat. Let's each embark on a path of progress in their lives. Even this path will mean unprecedented difficulties. But the problem is, do they know what difficulty is? The answer is no. At least for a certain period of time, they have a certain level of understanding of certain things. Only in this way can it go further on this road. But it's just further away. It will not know what lies ahead. But on this day, Suryl continued to prepare so seriously for the next second collapse. She looked at Shilin on the other side at this moment. What is she going to do? What should she do? She doesn't know what she should be able to change. She can change for a while, but she cannot change for a lifetime. At least, she can't do these things. At least under this rule, there is more than one thing that needs to be changed or replaced. Including bishops, every part of this machine, including it, is constantly in decay in various senses, waiting for its inevitable outcome. Destiny is already at an end, and from any angle, what they need to do is to make it possible to bid farewell in a very good way. But what kind of result is called a farewell? She has been thinking all along. Think about this world, think about those so-called destinies. Only then will it be so clear what will happen next. Those Shilin's companions will die from torture, die from pain. And she just calmly asked for a handgun. At least, make their deaths less tragic. Only at that moment will she truly understand why all of this must truly be changed. No one can remain so steadfast in the decisions she made in her early years for the following years. At that moment, what the world saw was her unwavering determination in the face of difficulties. That, perhaps it was during that era, what Suryl Caslana did later in those years, at least in her opinion, was the best choice. That kind of the choice that determines fate, even if the cost of this path is extremely cruel to others. Such as how many people will die. How many people will fall victim to her plan, just this Tower of Babel and even the entire Eurasian continent. She refused to think, simply because thinking about this matter meant the greatest, most ridiculous, and meaningless. She hesitated to step back because she didn't want to do it. If there really exists some so-called possibility and hope in this world, she will do her best. And she must also make that choice. What to choose? The laws of this era constrain things that many people cannot accept. One thing that will change the world and be unacceptable to many people. And she can even learn from His Excellency Apocalypse. That person, he's already so used to it. Chapter 10. Eve, 1. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Just because the essence of this road during her work, she also kept pondering a question in her diary. Who am I? Who does Caslana expect me to become? That's right, it's just a family. She knew better than ever that she was not the kind of heir that her family expected or hoped for. But the problem is, she is just the kind of person who is not so correct and doesn't meet the needs of Caslana and Shaniat. But Kiana's situation is different, it's really different. Mr. Apocalypse has placed a lot of trust in him. And now at this moment, she looked at Shilin and said, what do you want to change? Or do you really think? I can't save it, no matter what. No matter what, I, a 4-year-old child, am facing such a problem. I can only do my best. Just like my aunt, what political capital does she have to confront and change fate's attitude towards that matter? For example, Wendy, for everyone else. Although she is clear in her heart and knows everything that will happen in the future. From any angle, she was well aware of why the decline of the Knight clan was so comprehensive and thorough. My aunt also told her another question. In a sense, I can also serve as an imperial knight, but the question is, will Caslana really allow someone surnamed Apocalypse to wield the key of the 7th god? Delisa was so calm when she spoke. In the world of power, there is no family bond. May I ask, in another fate, if Siegfried really received the promise and hope of Kiana's future stability from his own family, why take the risk? Only in this way. This is the problem, this is the fact that cannot be changed no matter what. They even fate. What kind of era do we expect and want? What kind of world, what kind of heir? She didn't know, or rather, at least in this world, their understanding of those things is the same. What they carry, what they bear. Caslana's 4 words defined everything about them. They are descendants of knights and saints, the tomorrow that the family yearns for. But at this moment, Suryl is still thinking so seriously. Where is the knight's tomorrow? Is it ridiculous? That's ridiculous. And a few days later, she was still practicing gun fighting alone in the snowy area of the Tower of Babel. Every moment, all the other Valkyrie who reside here are unbelievable. Is this the level of the current miss of the Castellana family? Patrick couldn't believe it. It's not surprising, she has always been better than all of us. However, another Valkyrie said, her surname is Castellana, and that's not surprising. But there are also many of us. Don't forget, her body is the crystallization of the bloodlines of 2 major families. The future heirs of Shaniat and Caslana, said some people who know her background as they looked at Suryl, the sun goddess of the Caslana family who trained in combat skills with guns, and in that family, those bloodlines were not pure. So, what about her sister? She's stronger, Patrick said. Suryl's excellence lies in her almost better understanding of the political landscape of fate than anyone else. The so-called destiny political pattern still remains the so-called family bishop. No matter how common artificial scars are, the power and value of the divine bond lies here. After all, they are more aware than ever of the seriousness of certain things. Destiny, can we really allow someone like this to become the future co-leader of the 2 major families? Anyway, in this family that has completely declined from tradition to today. Suryl's existence may bring new things to this family. Vitality, or hope. But the question is, at the very least, will there really be any? Patrick doesn't think so, and even some people's criticism of Siegfried has evolved from his teenage prodigal son. Why can't he have an extra son? But everyone knows that it is precisely because of their daughter's identity that they are able to maintain themselves in the face of the turbidity within the family. I don't know when it started, but the decline of the Kaslana and Shaniat families made them so ridiculous and vulnerable. The glory of the past, everything of the past, and even the so-called family items of the past, have long lost their dominant significance. Perhaps this is fate. In the years to come, she wrote one sentence like this. I have always been clear that I am not just myself. Anyway, what I need to consider is everything. Including the future of both of us, including the future of our family. I am well aware that some things must be changed. Change what? It's just the world, and from any angle, she is very clear about what she needs to do. Not only for the upcoming second collapse, but also for his too dangerous ideas about the future. Anyway, survival is inevitably the most fundamental truth. And for this reality, there are many things that Sullivan, who has a basic understanding of the facts, has done. Living is the foundation. Anyway, some changes have already been prepared. When she was so calm preparing for everything, including in the future when Siegfried made the heavenly fire sacred, cutting her own birthday gift. It was the time after Cecilia's death, just on the surface. Before all of this, only her own heart fully understood that what she needed next was not just to survive this long second collapse. Even in the face of Otto Apocaris's plan, calculation. Faced with various things that this person can do. She has to face this person more than anyone else at this moment. As the second collapse approached, she wrote it down alone in her diary. What kind of person is he? In a sense, I know more than anyone how high risk it is to work with him or even be his subordinate. The means and character of this person determine the problems and situations we face when facing this person. Perhaps only I have become the constraint of this era. I may have a clearer understanding of what to do in the future when facing this situation. Otto Apocalypse and his way of doing things determine that some things cannot be expected. This is indeed a fact, and also the reason why she has so many concerns about that bishop. The behavior of that person back then, and the cunning moves played by Bishop Otto in her memory, determined that anyone could become the most ridiculous sacrifice. However, a few-year-old child has such a profound understanding of the bishop's character. Profound to she could almost see that everything Otto Apocalypse had truly wanted to do for 500 years was never the resurrection of Kallian. However, Kallian never died in 1477, in the stupidity, arrogance of Otto Apocalypse. But she made it clear in the diary for Otto that you were just dreaming, Bishop. That's right, this is her attitude.